and your honor is yours. The floor.
Thank you. Title of the book is Heraclitus Redux, Technological Infrastructures and Scientific Change. You would not believe that this is the result of 20 years of work. I've been working on the problem of scientific change since graduate school, which means before electricity. I fussed about the standard philosophical models, but something was missing. In the 80s, I team taught an interdisciplinary course, Humanities and the Biological Sciences, with Joe Falkingham from our biology department. At one point, when we were just talking about the course, he mentioned the difficulties the invention of the electron microscope posed for microbiologists in the development until the development of the theory of crystals. And I cried, Eureka! That was the part that was missing, the role of innovative technologies in theory change. According to Heraclitus, everything changes and nothing remains the same, and you cannot step twice into the same stream. That is a line that has dogged me all my career. Surely, I first argued, some things stay the same. And while it is true that some things stay the same for a period of time, eventually all things change. In Heraclitus Redux, I argue that while all things change, they don't change at the same pace, leaving us with the illusion of permanence. I go so far as to argue that even those vaunted eternal philosophical questions change over time. You know, the ones that we tell our students have been asked for millions of years and are still being asked, if not answered. One way to understand this is to see what counts as a satisfactory answer to the so-called eternal questions, and that they change over time. Consider one central question of ethics. What is the good life? A satisfactory answer to that question, when asked in 4th century BCE Athens, in which women did not have the vote and slavery was accepted, will differ from a satisfactory answer today, when we're working out the best relations between men and women and slavery is considered an abomination. In the theory of knowledge, what counts as knowledge changes when instruments come to play a significant role in inquiry and change the meaning of evidence. So while the words in the question remain the same, the meaning of the question changes. The main theme of Heraclitus Redux is that in many cases, scientific theory change is forced by technological innovation. Get a new instrument that shows you stuff you couldn't see before and which current theories can't explain, you need a new theory. But the story is more complicated than that. For at least in the contemporary world, you can't do science sitting alone in an empty room. You need a lab, and that means lots of toys, instruments, venting for chemical labs, computers, assistants, and lots of money, which means writing grants for granting agencies, which are part of the support system. Furthermore, the cost of the building in which your lab is housed is a lot more than an ordinary classroom building, for it needs to be able to handle all the equipment. What I'm referring to here is what I call a technological infrastructure. If you bring in new instruments, you need new equipment to support them. This forces you to shift stuff around, restructure the support system. Here we have one example of change, but let's look at it further. To run your lab, you need grad students. They come and go. And when new ones appear, things get done differently. And surely, you will say, the universe stays the same. Come on now. The universe is a big place, and it's expanding, and stars collide, and new elements are formed, and we can't explain over half of it. Black matter makes up over half the matter in the universe, and we don't even know what it is, or what it does. We think it has something to do with gravity, but we haven't come up with the instruments we need to find the stuff. Consider Tim's favorite topic, climate change. More likely than not, this will not be the same planet in 100 years as it is now. We might not even exist. The oceans are warming, migration patterns are changing, food chains are changing. You know the rest of the story. The interrelatedness of the components of our environment is just beginning to dawn on most of us, but not on our president. And when we start to work out the implications of a paltry 2 degrees rise in temperature, we should start to panic. But we don't. We'll fix it. Yeah. As I worked on the notion of a technological infrastructure, I began to see technological infrastructures all around us. Think about what has to be in place for you to drive from home to work. Yes, you need a car, which has to be manufactured and transported from the factory to the store. The factory has to be built from materials, which have to be mined and worked into things that we can use to build a factory. So you have mines and mining equipment and the means to transport the materials to the work site. You need fuel. So right now we rely heavily on carbon-based fuels, which have to be mined and refined and transported over roads or railroads, which have to be built out of materials that need to come from somewhere. And all of this needs to be financed. Hence, banks and investors and the global financial system. Need I go on? But what will happen when we abandon gasoline in favor of solar power? We will need a new technological infrastructure and everything that entails. So technological innovation forces change everywhere, and there is no end in sight, primarily because the one law of technology, that there will always be unexpected consequences of innovation, will force us to keep innovating to counter negative developments. Finally, technological innovation changes the meaning of words. We know what we mean when someone says, "I see you." But when we say we saw something through an electron microscope, it's different. For one thing, the electron microscope operates by an arm controlled by a computer, gliding over a surface. What it detects is transmitted to a computer, and using a series of programs, projects an image on a computer screen. So in what sense do we see what the electron microscope has detected? But we say we saw it. And so, we ask of our children, why do they have to grow up? And we deplore the changes in our lives because we really want things to remain as they were. But, newsflash, it ain't going to happen. Change is constant. To be happy, we have to learn to live with it and maybe even enjoy it. Thank you.